Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a Battlegrounds showcase with Adam Warlock. I have just completely fallen in love with this champion over the last couple of months. I've ranked 2'd him and did this showcase, and since then I've ranked 3'd him. So hopefully this will show you why and maybe persuade some of you to rank up your own Adams. I'm going to treat this as a showcase, less of a guide, although I am going to include a bit of a section at the start to explain a few tips and tricks that you can use against the AI. Adam's often seen as an AI dependent champion, someone who can be completely screwed over and messed up by the AI, and to some extent that is true, but I think a lot of the time people treat him as someone who is completely at the mercy of the AI, whereas in reality there are a lot of things that you can do to tilt the scales into your favour, control the AI, and give yourself the best chance of completing his rotation. And as a quick aside before we get into that, just a note on reliability. I feel that, and I know that I have in the past seen Adam Warlock showcases and thought, well, you've just picked the perfect fight. What's supposed to happen when the AI doesn't play into me? Adam is not as reliable as you're showing in this video. And I kind of just want to preempt that and just say, yeah, I mean, that is the Adam showcase that I've made here. I've gone through the fights and I've picked the best attempts that I've got just to show you Adam's ceiling. This is what the purpose of the video is to show you how good he can be. In my view, Adam is a champion that you need to dedicate a lot of time to learning and to get really good with him and get really good against the AI for you to be able to recreate these sorts of fights reliably. But having said that, I am going to do a couple of things to bring you along the journey with me without thinking that all of this stuff is just way above your pay grade. The first thing is I do have one fight towards the end where I'm specifically including an attempt where I lose my counter, and I just want to show you that it's not the end of the world if that happens. I'm not going to do it for every single fight because that would be double the length of the video, and I know you don't want to sit here for an hour. But in reality, if you do lose your counter, it doesn't take that long to reset and go again. You'll still get a decent score and you can still close out the fight. And then the second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to include how many attempts it took me to get each fight. If it took me 20 attempts to get a fight, you know it's not probably going to be very useful. But I would say that the vast majority of fights in this showcase are ones that I would take in Victory Track, in Gladiator Circuit or tournaments. But on with the video. So like I said, I'm going to go through 6 tips on how to use Adam against the AI and how to tilt the scales in your favour. And we're going to start off with a really simple one, breaking their block. This is maybe the most obvious one. If the AI does go back and hold block and they won't play into you, you're unblockable, you can dash at them and just break their block, as you see here. Next up is using a special. So whenever Adam uses his special, it will refresh and pause his sovereignty counter. This means that it's an easy out. If the AI isn't playing into you, you will be able to throw your special and continue a counter. You'll see here that at the end of this combo, Kindred does a light attack and then dashes back and holds block, leaving us no time to dash in and break his block. However, instead of letting our sovereignty counter fall off, I throw my special one. I know that it's going to connect because it's unblockable, and that will refresh and allow us to continue. But what if you don't have a bar of power, and what if they aren't dashing back and holding block? How do you continue your counter then? Well, that's the next tip. It's using Adam's pod. So Adam has an ability where if he double taps block, he'll activate his stasis pod. This will refresh and pause his sovereignty counter. So if the AI won't throw their special, you double tap block and then they dash in and you get your opening that way. It will take time for you to learn when to use your pod. This is something that comes with a little bit of quick reflexes. It is a split-second scenario where the AI either hasn't thrown their special or they throw a light attack and then another light attack and they don't throw their special then. It can be really tough to learn how to use, but this is just something that comes over time with Adam and is incredibly useful for keeping your sovereignty counter going. Next up is using your striker, but this is a little bit risky. It's kind of break glass in case of emergency, last resort. If your pod doesn't work, if you can't break their block, if you can't use a special, You can throw your striker, but the timing on this is so tight because the striker doesn't pause and refresh Adam's sovereignty counter. It means that your striker would need to connect before your sovereignty counter falls off, and as you see here, we weren't quite quick enough in this instance and our sovereignty counter does fall off. It's not a perfect way, but I did want to include it. So we've covered the ways of getting yourself out of a sticky situation, but there are a couple of tips I can give you to keep yourself out of those sticky situations in the first place. And the first one is by using light intercepts. This is mainly before your opponent gets to a bar of power, and this is how I start off every match with Adam Warlock. So the reason I don't want to end a combo with a medium while the opponent is below a bar of power is that they don't then have an opportunity to throw a special. They don't have one. It means that you're either banking on yourself to be able to get an intercept, or you're banking on the AI to hold block or dash back and hold block. I'd prefer to keep myself out in the open, keep on intercepting until they get above a bar of power. Additionally, it does specifically want to be light intercepts. I don't want a medium intercept because that allows the AI to potentially try and sidestep you. You don't want that with Adam because it does have bigger consequences, you'll lose your counter. So the reason that light intercepts are really useful is that one of three things is going to happen. They could go for your light intercept and play into you perfectly like this future Ant-Man is doing. This is obviously the ideal circumstance. Next, they could dash back and hold block like this Bullseye is doing here. Just gives you the opportunity to continue your counter. Or thirdly, they could dash back, then you go in for a medium and then they let you intercept them, and like this Photon has done. It doesn't matter which one the AI does, it just depends on whether you can react to it, and doing light intercepts will allow you the most flexibility to react to what the AI does. And the last tip is controlling your combos, or more specifically, your combo enders. So once you've got your opponent to one bar of power, you don't continue to backdraft constantly. You're doing it to get them to that bar of power, and then you're breaking the rhythm. Now, whether I finish my combos here or not really depends on the opponent. If I'm facing someone like this Onslaught here where I really want them to throw a special, I'm going to do a couple of hits and then dash back directly after one of my light attacks, but not the ender. This gives the opponent the best chance to throw their specials, and as you can see here, Onslaught's very happy to do so. Similarly with this Red Skull, I'm just going to be doing a medium and then a light or two, dashing back and allowing him the room to throw his special one. And then the last example of this is I've got this bishop here. This is to the extreme. This bishop actually doesn't end up throwing a special one, but I will just go in, I'll tap a couple times, I'll leave myself open, and then I still have the opportunity to continue my counter. If I'm facing someone like Sasquatch, where I don't really mind if they throw their special one or two, I can dex both easily. I'm not specifically trying to bait, then I'll end in medium hits. This means that the AI has the opportunity to throw the special if they want to, but they don't have to. And then later on, if they still don't throw it, I'll consider either going for the kill or specifically baiting out the special, like I mentioned before, by ending in a light and dashing back. Remember that if you do this, the AI still can throw their specials. Like this Attuma here, I'm ending in my mediums. I don't mind if he goes to special 2, but he might throw special 1 straight away. The Sasquatch didn't, but Attuma did. It just is stuff that you have to react to. And then finally here, if I'm facing an opponent where I specifically want to push them to special 2, then I'll be ending my combos in mediums. Adam isn't the best champion to try against champions that you want to push to special 2, because you can't block bait heavies to push them that extra bar of power, and I mean, you've got a taunt on them the whole time. But if you do want to do that, ending in a medium is the best chance that you've got. And that's the end of this guide section. So we're going to move on to the actual showcase now. I hope this was helpful, and yeah, let's get on with it. We're going to start off with Attuma. This is a really good matchup for Adam. He has enough damage to nuke it really fast and not take too much damage back. But it's a pretty simple fight, so I'm just going to use it as an easy into his rotation. So what we're going to do to start off is let Attuma dash back, go in, and our second light hit is going to start our sovereignty counter. The counter starts off at 10, and then each subsequent multiple of 10 that we reach, we gain something new. At 20, we'll gain a precision, making our hits pretty much guaranteed crits. Then when we get to 30, we'll get a big fury buff. Then the cycle concludes at 40, where we get a longer but lower potency fury buff, and the cycle repeats. I often try and fit in a striker and a heavy at above 30, which gives you a big chunk of damage, and then a special 2 often finishes off fights. So now that we know Adam's rotation and some tips against the AI, I'm just going to go into all of my favourite fights with him, and I'll explain how I approach Adam versus this specific matchup. So starting off with Onslaught, I don't want to be using my special 2 in this fight, because when I use my pod after the special 2, he's going to then throw his special and it'll hit me. You don't want to be hit by Onslaught specials, so I change up my strategy. I'm just going to hold on to my power completely. I'm going to go straight to special 3 and I'm going to try and nuke him. Your AI tips will really help here in order to bait out specials from Onslaught. In this specific matchup, he was very kind to me and threw them straight away, but I have had matchups where I've needed to go in, tap him once, dash back, tap him once, trying to bait out specials. You'll generally need to bait out 2 special ones from him. By that point, you can go in for your relic, and then you can go in for a combo and special 3. Looking back on this fight, I actually had room to just combo him down, and it wouldn't have needed the special 3. As it is, I did use a special 3, and it added on an extra 5 seconds or so this could have been even better. And this fight took me 2 attempts to get down. Next up is Photon, and this fight requires a very specific rotation. What you're going to want to do is bait out 2 bars of power from her, 2 special ones or a special 2. And this really needs to be done before she gets to 15. Otherwise she's automatically going to trigger pure light and she's going to destroy you. So you need to watch her pure light form charges, and you need to make sure that you're baiting these specials before she gets too high. You'll notice here that I stop a little bit early at the end of this combo because I don't want to give her too many, and then we bait that out. What you're going to do next then is trigger your relic, and then you're going to go for a heavy to activate pure light. You're going to throw your special 2, and then the pod will let you eat damage from the special 1 during pure light form. You parry the last hit, and then you go for a combo. Unfortunately, you'll notice that my heavy didn't actually crit from the relic, so it means that we don't quite finish her out. We needed to hold block and try and sidestep her. We get an intercept and we finish out the fight, and it goes fine in the end, but normally the fight does go down in the rotation that I described. The main thing to note is that you want to try and get your relic in above 30, which means that you get the big fury, and then your heavy crits, and then, that gives you the range. This fight took me a lot of attempts, probably about 10, but a lot of that was figuring out the right rotation. I think I'm pretty reliable with this match now, and I'd be pretty comfortable taking it. Next up is Bullseye, and I actually made a different video on this. I go way more in depth about how it works, so I'll link that, but I'll briefly go over the strategy here as well. So what we're going to be wanting to do is holding on to our power at the start of the fight, and we want to build it so that we have enough power in order to cancel out his killer instinct. You can do that by triggering it and then throwing a special. Adam works because his specials are unblockable. It means you can continue the fight and keep your sovereignty counter going, more importantly. So as we come up to this first bar of power, Bullseye triggers his killer instinct and we throw our special, allowing us to continue. We get the intercept and carry on comboing him, and then I dash back and I preemptively throw my pod before I know that he's going to throw the special. That means that we can go back in, trigger killer instinct once more, and then we get the opening again, we carry on, I go for a striker, I go for my heavy, and then we close it out with a special. That's kind of the strategy, that's what you want to do. Again, I go a lot more in detail in this on the video. If you're interested in it, go and check that out. This is not one that I'm ever going to recommend to anyone. It's probably the hardest video that I've ever had to get, and it took me about 23 attempts, I think it was. I do have the rotation down now, but it's still not one that I would aim to do unless I had no other option. I think I could probably get 43 to 48k, but usually not above that. Next up is Domino, and you might think, well, how on earth is Adam reliable for Domino? But he actually kind of is. So what I'm going to do at the start of this fight is I'm going to trigger my sovereignty counter on purpose and then let it fall off. This gives us the sovereignty buff, which actually makes Adam immune to ability actually reduction on his buffs. This is really useful because Domino now can't fail anything that we do apart from Dex, which isn't a personal buff. The main thing that you need to watch out for now is unlucky. Here we parry because we were unlucky, and you need to watch out for lucky in case she evades anything. Usually you will have a bar of power, so it's not too bad, and your specials are unblockable. The pod lets us deal with her special one pretty easily, and then before she has a chance to evade, we go for our striker, go for a heavy, and then we close it out with a special one. This is, again surprisingly, actually a really reliable matchup. I got this first time, and I've done it since, and it still holds up. It works really well. Adam has enough damage to get it down before it becomes a problem. The main thing you need to watch out for, like I said, is lucky and unlucky. But with your unblockable specials, with the pod, you can play around those pretty well. Next up is Killmonger, and this is a tougher one for Adam. Killmonger's special one is so difficult to deck sometimes, especially when you don't know when it's going to come at you, so it is a tough one. It does work pretty well. Adam's precision lets him get around Killmonger's critical resistance, and most of the time he's going to be throwing special ones. You're unblockable, so you don't need to deal with counterpunch. If the rotation goes perfectly, as you're going to see here, and Killmonger does throw his specials, even if you push him to special 2, it's not a big deal. If it does go perfectly, like I was saying, reverberation ends up triggering when he's on 0 power anyway, so it means that you're not going to be taking any reverb damage back. We go for this special 2 here, and unfortunately none of the hits crit. Killmonger probably would have been down in 40 seconds, 38 seconds if not for that, but as it is, none of them crit. The crit resistance came in clutch when Killmonger needed it, let him survive just long enough so that we could go for this special 2 after our sovereignty counter comes back. It starts off unblockable and we take him down. Like I said though, this was a tougher one. This must have took me about 7 or 8 attempts to get down. I think it's reasonable, but it's not the perfect matchup. It is tough to deal with all of the specials, and yeah, it's not a bad one. Next up we have Kindred, and Adam is actually really great for Kindred. One thing that I would change about my rotation here is that I would specifically go for my special one to start off the fight. You're going to see me use my special one to keep my counter going by accident, but it actually ends up being the perfect way to time my specials for Kindred's root phase. So as we go in for this combo here, Kindred doesn't play into us, we throw the special one, and this leaves us in the perfect position. So Kindred throws his special one, we react, punish, and go back in. We go for our relic, and then I go for a heavy, bait out this special before the root phase, and now I can go in for a combo, not break a stride, trigger the root phase, throw my special, and continue. Adam is great for Kindred because his buffs never run out, so you never get more charges put on you by Kindred's abilities, and atrophy doesn't affect it because you've already got the buff. The reason I go for special 1, like I mentioned before, is that if you get pushed to special 3, it just takes a bit more time off your score. And this match is really reliable. I did this on my second attempt, and I do this whenever I needed to. Next up is Sasquatch, and this is actually the only video in the showcase where my Adam is rank 3, everything else he's rank 2, but this Sasquatch is also rank 3, so we're equal matchups. So we're going to go in and trigger our sovereignty counter. Because of Adam's buffs, Sasquatch does gain increased power rate, so bear that in mind, watch out for it. You're going to be baiting more specials than usual. Also, Mystic Dispersion is a thing, so watch out for that as well. It's a little bit risky, but it is a good matchup. Because of how beefy Sassy is, I'm going to go for my special 3, and we're going to go for our relic, go for a heavy, bait out this special, and I actually make a little mistake here. I mistime my counter, and I actually get pushed above 40 before I throw my special 3. I'd rather have thrown it during my 30 counter, because then we would have gained the big fury from that and do a little bit more damage, so this match could have been a little bit faster as well. We'd also have the taunt, making this special potentially easier to bait out afterwards. But yeah, we're just going to let Sasquatch go into Wrath here, and then I'm going to get to my special 1, and we're going to trigger the sovereignty counter manually. We don't need to hit into his block if you're using a special, and then just bait out this special, go for an intercept, and close out the match. I don't think many champions could do this in 67 seconds. That is not a bad score. It's also a pretty reliable one as well. You are a little bit more AI dependent, hoping that he does throw his specials with the increased power gain from the buffs and from Mystic Dispersion, but it's a reliable matchup. I've done it a few times, it works. And I got this one down on my first attempt. Next up is Chavez, and Adam actually really works well for Chavez. Because of her AI bias to throw heavies, it can seem a bit scary, but a lot of the time what's going to happen is that your taunt is going to override that. You're actually going to see me end these combos with a lot of mediums, which is before I realised that that wasn't the right thing to do. but usually the taunt makes her throw the special anyway before she has a chance to throw the heavy, if that makes sense. She does throw her specials and plays very nicely. We manage to get all of them out of her and keep our counter going. We go for the relic, we go for a heavy. I'm just going to wait to see if she does throw the special one. She doesn't, she dashes at me, so I throw the special 2, and surprisingly, it closes it out. So a 36-second class disadvantage fight is not too bad. And this was a first attempt as well. Next up is Red Skull. I think Adam is, alongside CGR, probably the 2 best Red Skull counters in the game right now. They both work so incredibly well. I can't hit into Red Skull's block here because I'll take a bunch of damage, but what we can do is, like I mentioned in the Sasquatch matchup, we can trigger it manually. So I'm just going to let him hold block, I'm going to throw my special 1, it'll connect. Red Skull doesn't come back in and throw his special, so we throw the pod, and then he does after that. Now we have our true damage, which allows us to ignore any armor he has. The unblockable allows us to ignore his auto block, and yeah, turns out Red Skull kind of just gets nuked a little bit. So we're going to bait out this last special, go in for a combo, and then go in for our special 2. One thing that I will mention is that I have lately started changing up how I fight Red Skull a little bit, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. I find often, like we saw in that matchup, after I throw my special 1, he doesn't tend to throw his special 1, and you have to rely on the pod and then rely on his AI. What I'm thinking of doing is either going for my special 2 to start off the fight, that puts us in the pod with the taunt, and then they often throw their specials, it's pretty much guaranteed. Or, and this is something that I want to test, I want to bait out 1 special from Red Skull before we start the counter, and then I can just wait out the auto block, go back in with my special 1, start the counter that way, and then continue with the normal rotation of baiting out specials without them having been after a special 1. So that's just something I wanted to mention. Next up is Jessica Jones, and Adam works really well for her. You're pretty much doing the normal rotation except for one thing. You really want to make sure that you get to your special 2 and throw it immediately. You don't want to be above 2 bars of power for too long, otherwise Jess will start building her investigation, and it means that she's going to go unstoppable, get massive resistances, and pretty much just stall you out for the rest of the fight. So as we come up to our special 2 here, I'm going to make sure that I throw it immediately after filling those bars of power. We've only got 4 weaknesses on ourselves, and it still does a nice chunk of damage. This is an Ascended Jess, so as big as she gets. And our combo here nearly finishes her off. We don't panic and throw a special, because that would send her unstoppable, but we do go for a combo afterwards and finish her off that way. So very safe fight. This is one that I did first time, and yeah, it's not too bad at all. Next up, we have a rank 3 bishop, so we're punching up here. Adam's great for bishop. He, with his pod, goes incinerate immune. So my plan here is to bait out the special 1, use the pod to not have to dex it, and then we'll be immune to the incinerates. However, bishop just doesn't want to throw his special 1, and I figure in the end, we go for this. He goes for a couple lights, and I throw my pod. He goes to his special 2, and he finally throws a special. We get the dex in, go for our special 2, and then the pod after this means that we can take most of the special into the pod. We then take a couple on block, dex the rest, and go in for the combo, finish our counter, go for a relic, and then the combo after this finishes him off. This was one I did first attempt as well. It's not too bad. You just have to be ready for bishop to throw whichever special he fancies. Next up is Future Ant-Man. This is pretty hit or miss. I've had matches where this goes extremely well and Fanta doesn't get bad RNG with his armors, and then I've had matchups where it does go pretty bad and you spend the whole time trying to let them fall off or trying to intercept. I think this is pretty average RNG, but he does play into me when I want to intercept him and take them away. So just bear that in mind when you're watching this fight. It can go very badly. I have had matches though where even if it does go badly, Adam still finishes it within a minute or 70 seconds or something like that. This is just pretty much as well as it can go. So as we take this special 1, we dex the last bit, go in, go for our special 2, and that closes the fight out. So this one was my first attempt while I was trying to specifically record for this video, but I've taken this fight plenty of times in the past. It ranges, like I said, from this pretty much as well as it can go. up to 60 seconds, or sometimes he can just completely stall you out, so bear that in mind. Next up is Peni Parker. Peni is the old OP defender, and Adam just destroys her. Without her auto block, because we're going to be unblockable the whole time, Peni can't really do much. So it doesn't matter if she throws a special 1 or a special 2, and it doesn't really matter if she doesn't throw anything at all. So in this fight, she doesn't throw a single special. I give her every opportunity to, but we managed to get the range to go for a combo, a relic, a heavy, and the special 2 is way overkill. Again, this fight goes fine even if she does throw the specials. Special 2 might hurt a little bit on block, but it's not a big deal, it doesn't do too much damage. The special 1 will give her charges, but they won't let her auto block, and if they give you the power burn, the fight's probably gone wrong in other ways. This was one I did first attempt. It's probably Adam's best matchup, and it goes very well. Next up is Shuri. This is a rank 3, so we're going to be punching up again. Adam is fantastic for Shuri, because a little known thing about her is that when you hit her with true damage, which Adam has with his true damage buff, she can't gain her matrix charges. So as you watch here, she gains 2 when we hit into a block, but as soon as we get that true damage up, they actually go down because it removes them as well. So we're just going to go in and not have to worry about her armors, not have to worry about her miss at all. We can just carry on. So we bait out this special 2, get an intercept, and then we go for a relic and a heavy. I make a little mistake here, and I shouldn't have gone for that heavy, because we actually have to sidestep her to get that special 2 off, because if I hadn't done that, she would have blocked the unblockable special. That's the one thing that you have to watch out for with Shuri. She still can pose a bit of a threat. But yeah, I managed to notice it just in time and sidestep her. This was another one that I did first time, and it's a very good matchup for him. Next up is a rank 3 Warlock, punching up again. Going to be going for trying to push him to special 2, because I don't really want to deal with the special 1 too much, but it's not a big deal if he does throw it. You can throw your pod and you can go immune to his shock, so even if he does have infection on you, it's not a big deal. But ideally, he's going to go back and hold block, and he does. We push him to L2 and we bait this out. I go in for a combo here, then a striker, and you just see how fast the infection falls off because we've got a couple of unique buffs. I then go for another combo, and to be honest, I probably should have just carried on comboing and then maybe go special 3. Adam can't crit against Warlock because he has his armor up buff, and then we took some damage even through the pod from his special 2. However, it's not that big a deal. It's still an incredibly good score, and Adam works very well for it. This was first time again. This is just a match that I found in Victory Track. The main thing, as I say, is just try not to have infection on you when he does throw a special. Next up is Mantis, and this is actually quite an interesting one. So often you want your taunt, because if you don't, it can mess with Adam's rotation, but in this one, you kind of want her tranquilized to fail it, and it does here, because we don't really want Mantis throwing her special 1. We want to push her to special 2. Obviously, then the taunt does come in handy when baiting out the special 2. You do have to be a little bit lucky when she does throw it, but if she doesn't have the taunt, it means that she won't throw special 1. I did have one attempt before this one where she did throw the special 1, and it actually worked out fine. I managed to time my special to get rid of the encroaching sleep. You can also just out damage her before the sleep even activates, but unfortunately I got hit with a combo, and that was my fault, so I couldn't include it in this video. But yeah, Adam works really well for Mantis. It's just a case of watching out for her sleep. Next up here we have Iceman, and this is a nice showcase, as mentioned, against Warlock and Bishop, of being able to go immune to energy debuffs. The cold snap triggers at the start of the fight, and then we just dash back, double tap block, and activate our stasis pod, giving us an energy protection buff, which gives us immunity to shock, incinerate, cold snap, and frostbite. And from here it becomes a normal Adam fight. That buff is really useful for the specific matchups I've mentioned before. It can really come in clutch. There aren't too many Iceman counters. I mean, personally, I find myself getting caught out a little bit more than I'd like, so it's nice to have another one in the deck. And yeah, this one is a pretty simple Adam fight. It's just a case of going through the process and making sure you play him properly. This is one that I got second attempt. I messed it up the first time, and that was on me. So we're coming near to the end, and I just want to go into a little bit of detail on what it means to lose your sovereignty counter with Adam. How impactful is it really? And in my opinion, it's not bad. It doesn't mean that you're going to lose the round necessarily. It doesn't mean that you're unable to get a good score. But this example is the worst possible case scenario where you lose the ramp pretty high up. If you do lose it, you kind of want to lose it early on. It means that you can get back into it pretty quickly and you don't lose out on too much of the fury. But here we get just before we get to 30, we lose the ramp, and it means that we need to restart. So that's wasted 30 seconds of the fight. What does it mean? Well, I just throw my special 2, I reset, I let him throw this special 1 at me, and then we get out of the way. Whenever Adam's sovereignty counter resets, he triggers an Intimidate, which lets us get an easy hit into block, and then we can just restart. We go back in for another special 2 here, then we avoid the special 1 in our pod, and we can just go back in, go for a relic, and close out the fight. And that is barely any time with a big fury up, and we still get close to 50k. That is not too bad. Obviously it's not ideal, but 49k can still win you a hell of a lot of matches. And remember that it might be plus or minus depending on what sort of opponent you're fighting. If you're facing off against an Attuma, which was the really fast one at the start, you might get close to 50k. Or if you're facing someone like Sasquatch, which takes a bit more time, losing your ramp could make it last closer to 90 seconds, or you could even time out because of it. I don't want to downplay it too much. It can be impactful, obviously, but I just want to make it clear that it's not the end of the world. And I'll just show a clip of Adam versus Iron Man Infinity War where it does go really well, and this is the perfect matchup. Adam is really good for Iron Man. He's become a little bit of a meta defender recently. I've seen more and more people ranking him up, but Adam's true damage and the high crit rate can let you get around his armors. Plus, it means that when you do get to his 15% phase, you can ignore his auto block, which is the main annoyance. I've even had it where my counter leaves him on 5%. I had it where it left him on 1%, and although he does get a little bit of power gain, Adam can just chill, wait for it to finish, and then you can reset your sovereignty counter, go back in, go unblockable, and just close it out. However, in this match, we time it perfectly. We go for a relic. We had a heavy after that, had much more range, and yeah, it is a very, very good matchup for Adam. And then the final matchup today is a Scorpion. This is just an example of the AI absolutely not wanting to play along, and just an example of how you can cope with that. So pretty much anything that can go wrong does go wrong here, but we still come out with a great score. So first of all, Scorpion doesn't want to go for his special, so we have to use the pod, we have to escape that. He then doesn't throw it even after the pod, so I have to throw my special in order to go for it. The stun runs out before I can go in, so he throws his special. Luckily, I throw the relic just in time for that hit to get evaded. The relic still lands. Scorpion still doesn't want to throw his special, but I can't throw mine because I don't want to take Power Sting. We go back in for a combo, finish him off. But yeah, despite Scorpion not wanting to play along, he still went down. And that's going to conclude the showcase. I'm sure more meta defenders are going to come along that Adam can take. I'm sure I'm going to figure out ways to take other meta defenders with Adam. But yeah, this is the showcase for now. This is the list of champions that I've found Adam really good for. As I said before, he is now rank 3. He is an absolute beast at rank 3. He's definitely not for everyone. I wouldn't recommend him to everyone. If you're thinking about ranking him up, really think it through. Make sure he's what you want, because he's probably one of the most common champions that people regret. So I just advise being absolutely sure before you go for it. In my view, he is the hardest champion to consistently get good results from in the entire game. I think he's got the highest skill cap. Just because you benefit so highly from an intricate knowledge of the AI and how it behaves and what it will do and how you can tilt the scales into your favor, like I've said before. I hope the tips in this video help. I hope the showcase of what he can do helps persuade you that he's really, really cool. And yeah, I think that's about everything. So thanks very much for watching. I love doing these showcases. They're a ton of fun. I love sharing the champions that I'm really enjoying at the moment. So leave comments if there's any champions that you specifically want, or if you've used Adam against anyone else. I'm always up for trying new fights. But in any case, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.